Welcome to the first episode of Govcast. I am Felix L, with my co-hosts Issac Playkosh and Isaac Kennard. In this episode, we will be talking about the voice of the people in voting. Today, we will be talking with Senator Reggie Thomas from District 13, Lexington, Kentucky.
Welcome back. I am Isaac Playkosh. For voting, a lot of people don't feel as represented as they want to be. It feels like their vote doesn't matter as much. Isaac, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that especially with the Electoral College, a lot of people see their vote as, the majority of the people in my state vote for this party, then if I voted for the other party, no, my individual vote does not count really towards anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yet also during very close elections or even in split states, it's much harder to understand. Even though your state may be a red state or your state may be a blue state, or even mixed, it's your vote still does count for different stuff. Just to be able to either one vote may not be as much, but when you're able to get a bunch of other people to keep voting, that's able to affect a lot of how people go into elections. Yet also for people, it's really nice to have a community, and for a lot of famous people and like influencers, they have a really big impact on how people vote and the effects of who they vote for. With just seeing if somebody you like said that, I'm gonna vote for this candidate or another candidate, it can really raise the voting outcome. Isaac, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of people, if they see a big person who has a huge following, state one thing is one way. They're like, I think this. I'm voting for this candidate. You'll have a lot of people be like, that's what this person thinks. Let me also look at this candidate, see what I think's good about them, and then based on that, vote for them. Or just look at, this large famous person or this big influencer said they're voting for this candidate, so now I should vote for that candidate to show my support to this influencer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I feel like it also has a big influence on voter registration, because when seeing, it's able to increase those votes, able to increase those people who are voting, it's also able to get younger people to vote, because a lot of young people right now, they think about how their vote doesn't matter as much, no matter where they are, where they live, because what they're seeing, a lot of stuff is just what they're saying, what's happening, in what they're doing is not affecting really anything, and even for protesting, that goes into a lot of that as well.
I will say, I do feel like if I, was able to vote, I don't know how much my vote would really matter, just because, for the last however many elections, Kentucky has been a red state. So it just, I don't know, it feels like my voice doesn't matter as much as, battleground states or whatever.
Yeah, you do say that, but in reality, we have a Democratic governor in a red state,
mm-hmm.
which is really unheard of. And with almost everyone loving Andy Beshear, it's amazing how difference it can make, and impressive about how different it really is. Because with being in a red state, people had to go out and vote for the Democratic candidate and not just vote all Republican.
Mm-hmm. I will say, before him, from what I remember, the previous governor, who was a Republican, was in office for a very long time. Now, of course, some of that will be because people tend to either vote for, a straight ballot, or they'll just vote for the same person that they know will represent them in some way. But still, he was in office for a long time. So this is a recent change.
Mm-hmm. I will also say, for people's vote seem not matter as much, there is a lot of influence on that kind of stuff with gerrymandering. With people in power changing the district lines so it's able to have one party have more power than the other. Because I've seen, and when you look at district lines just in Fayette County, I've seen the streets be divided in half. Same street, same neighborhood, everything. Just one half is district, say District 1, and the other half is District 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much of a difference. It's just what they did, just to either get different voters, just to get that over the edge, just for one party to be higher in contendance.
Yeah. I don't know. I know that's, an issue in a lot of different places. I would imagine, people probably that was an oversight when they were, setting up the way that being able to change where the districts were drawn, there was an oversight in how, just that party being able to draw their own districts. But
yeah, this is not just in Lexington, it's also all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's these random things that are just placed in different areas just for certain parties to get an advantage. There's been times when a senator, not senator, but people that drew lines just said, "Hey, we're going to redraw lines," but it's just for a political advantage, either to take out a candidate, so it's able so one party is able to automatically win, or some other occasion just to get more votes. It's horrible for how it works, but it also affects about how people get money or for taxes and everything. It can really affect about their living style and what's around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it can be a very large issue in places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm concerned about with how things are, and even with trying to say we need to stop this or we need to get a more nonpartisan people into those situations to redraw those lines. If we do need to redraw them for new people coming in, new economics, everything, whatever that is. But the people who are making those laws are the same people who are changing those lines, and it's really making that much harder to even change anything. And that goes back into the electoral college, people not feeling they're represented as a vote. And with America wanting to be voting, having your representation, having that you are not just another person, but actually have a voice for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think we could try and fix this if the people who are in power are the ones who it would be bad for them to make this fair? Right?
This is what I've been struggling with to understand, is that with each person having a bias, and it's really hard to get that bias not shown. It's hard to determine which people should be drawing lines, and that's a big task as well. And if you're gonna try to make it uneven, it's gonna hurt one group or the other. So I've seen a lot of showing for gerrymandering. For people who don't know, it's when you're redrawing lines, because make it either one party having a better advantage compared to another one, even though if there's more Democrats in a state, you can redraw lines to make that Republicans will win the majority vote or win the electoral college, whatever that is, able to affect that, so it's able to bring more votes for themselves and have them win the election. And both parties do this, and it's really hard to figure out, are you going to do a mixture of Democrats and Republicans? But I feel like you also need ages as well, different ages as well.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. There will always be some sort of bias when it comes to drawing certain lines.
That's human nature.
Yeah.
Bias.
Right. Everyone has, I believe this thing. And you're going to have another person who's, I believe this thing. It'll be two separate things, and each person will stick to that and will do actions that benefit their belief and where their bias is pointed towards.
I think no matter what, you're always going to have bias. There'll be times when the people we vote into power are not going to listen to us. Even though we voted them into the position they are, there are times when we need opportunities to show that we're also able to take you out of power. Not just put you in, but also take you out. I feel like that's a lot of time when protesting comes into the change. But one thing that for protesting is that they may be going on the streets, going to protest to show that we believe in this, we want this to change. Yet they are not. Sometimes they may not even be talking to the actual people who make the laws. The people may be seeing it, but don't know what to do. And a lot of people protesting, I feel like their ideas can really make an impact on what people, what laws are put into place, what laws are going to be voted on. And I feel like even doing that is able to increase the person's voice, able to show that we're not just one person, but we're a group of people that believe in one idea for the betterment of our community.
Yeah. I think, those are good ways to enact change. But what do you all think is what we should replace this system with, right? Again, as you said, Isaac, there will always be some bias in our system, but I believe that there is probably some system that we could come up with, or someone has probably come up with, that minimizes that bias, or at least reduces it, to make it, the system more, to make the system reflect the people's views more.
With AI becoming so big, what opportunities there may be with AI being involved with this stuff? Because it would make an opportunity to unbiased, make it completely even, so it's a fair chance for both sides.
I'd say, taking an example with ChatGPT, you can ask them, hey, make me a list of positive things about both of the upcoming presidential candidates. Ask for a list of negative things about each candidate. And it will take information that has been published, and it will give that back to you in an organized list that's very easy to look at and understand. I think that can be a big help with some people deciding, maybe I do want to vote for this person because I like these positive things about them, even though the other candidate also had some good positive things, but I just think that this more fits what change that I want to see in our country.
But how many people? And I know this was kind of a controversy with the with one of the big AI companies where they'd ask them, well, should I vote for this candidate or this candidate in the upcoming presidential election? And then one would be like, well, we can't give you political advice, and then the other one was like, well, here's why you should vote for this. My question to that is how many people are actually asking their at-home AI assistant these questions, and how much does that factor into their judgment?
I do wonder because with that, a lot of times when if it is saying you should vote for this person, you should vote for this candidate, it can also affect by the programmer what the thing says, and it can really affect about what's going to go on in the future of what they're going to be voting for.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I believe that's all the time we have right now. After this break, we will be talking with Senator Reggie Thomas and his thoughts on the vote and the voice of the people. Welcome back, everyone. And today we are here with Senator Thomas from District 13. So, Senator, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I was raised with a middle-class family. My dad was a high school teacher and later a high school counselor. My mom was a social worker. I had one sister, Rose, who's like a twin. We're only 10 and a half months apart, which means for 6 months of the year, six weeks of the year, we're the same age. I went to high school in Lexington, Kentucky. I finished Bryan Station High School. Then went on to college, graduated from Dartmouth College, and then from Harvard Law School. A couple of years later, I married, and my wife and I moved back to Lexington. I was working in D.C. Prior to returning to Lexington, and started my career as a law professor at the University of Kentucky. 4 years later, took the position as general counsel for Kentucky State University, where my parents graduated. Had 3 children. I have a daughter, Joanna, who works for the House Committee. It's in Washington, the House Representatives Committee on Commerce and Technology. My son, Leonard, is a dean at JCTC, Jefferson Community Technical College in Louisville. And my other son also works in D.C., Philip, my youngest. He works for Mayor Muriel Bowser as one of her directors. So I'm very proud of my children. I have 3 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson. And now I'm in my 40th year of teaching at Kentucky State University, and have been in the state senate for 13 going on 11 years now. We'll have I got elected December 10th, 2013 in the Senate. Started serving in 2014. So I've served 10 sessions, going on my 11th session. Actually going on my 12th session. Going on my 12th session. Beginning 2025. And I've been proud to serve District 13, Senate District 13, the people of Lexington in the Senate for 11 years, and I'm running uncontested, so it'll be at least 4 more years. So that's a snapshot of my life.
What are your thoughts on voting and people voting in elections?
Well, look, I think the greatest right that we have here in America, with the possible exception of being able to worship freely and openly, the right of free exercise that's in the First Amendment. I think that may be the only greater right than our right to vote. I mean, America was a tremendous experiment 250 years ago. No country had ever, in the history of mankind, had ever done what America did in the late 1700s, and that is to have a democracy where the people voted on their representatives, and the representatives were beholden to the people, and the people could replace their representatives, including their president, after a certain period of years. That had never been done. It had been talked about and idealized by such great philosophers as John Locke and Rousseau, but never put into practice until America did it in the late 1700s, and it survived for almost 250 years now. And of course, that whole notion that democracy can exist, and that democracy can live in a nation where people vote on their electors, and their electors again must abide by the will of the people, is being threatened. That's being put to a vote literally in 2 weeks here in this country. And so I think I think that ability to vote in America is what has made us special and really the envy of the world. I mean, there are other democracies now, but America is the leader of the world because of the fact that because we have free will in terms of our ability to vote, self-determination in terms of our leadership. We've been able to thrive tremendously. A strong economy, strong educational system, a strong cultural system. I mean, it has. Again, no country's ever been as successful as America and whether that will continue, I hope it will continue. But we'll find out in 2 weeks. Democracy is definitely on the ballot in 2024.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people think that their vote doesn't matter, especially like in the Bible Belt, leading to millions of Americans not voting every year. Why do you think so many people are so hesitant about voting?
Well, I think it's incorrect to say or believe that our vote doesn't matter. Every vote counts. Every election cycle, you can look at election across this country and see where an election was decided by 1 vote, 5 votes, 10 votes. I mean, it happens in every election. And you look at the presidential election last year where you had, 3 states? I think Biden won Pennsylvania by 20,000 votes. Won Michigan by 11,000 votes. Or maybe 15,000 votes. Georgia by 11,000 votes. Those 3 states decided the presidency of this country. I mean, every vote and every vote matters, and every person's vote can decide an election, or does decide. So it's just a mistake, inaccurate to say, or to say that people's votes don't matter, or for someone to feel that their vote doesn't matter. Their vote matters a great deal, and I would say this, that if a person doesn't vote, what they're really saying to themselves is that they don't matter. Their vote doesn't matter, that they don't matter in society. And that's a terrible way to feel, because everyone has self-worth. And so everyone should vote because we all have self-worth. We all have value individually as people in this nation.
So, with gerrymandering affecting district lines, what effect do you think that it has on the votes of the people?
Well, I think I'll tell you the effect that it has on the votes of the people. When you gerrymander a district, then what you're creating is a very narrow district in terms of review, a district that lends itself to ideologues that are really outside, common sense and rational thinking when it comes to government. And you elect these extreme politicians, which bring extreme views to government, and really makes government highly ineffective. The whole idea is that you want districts that have a broad cross section of people in that district, and because it has a broad cross section of people in that district, that district tends to be mainstream, tends to be moderate, has different points of view, and looks for people to represent them who are moderate in their thinking, who are reasonable in their thinking, who are willing to work with people, like-minded people, from other areas, to craft legislation and policy that benefits people in a very productive and very reasonable way. Gerrymandering brings about creates extreme districts that gives extreme legislators that again cause disruption and cause the inability of government to function because they have no interest or no desire to come together to seek common ground to collaborate on important issues and to craft something that's productive and meaningful and lasting for our society. That's the dangers and the causes of gerrymandering, is that you get very irrational legislators in government.
Do you think that AI will ever have be a part of either creating district lines to make it less biased?
Restate your question, because I didn't quite understand it.
Do you think AI will ever be a part of creating district lines to have a less biased approach?
Well, you should know, and I'll tell your listeners that I served on the interim task force here in Kentucky, in the Kentucky legislature, on artificial intelligence. At the end of the session, we being this Kentucky state legislature, created a task force to look at AI and all of its implications and ramifications for Kentucky and really for America. And that's been a highly informative work group that we've been a part of this session. I will say this: AI is here to stay. We're not going to get rid of it, and we're not going to regulate it away. And AI has a lot of good uses. I think you can use AI as a way to create what you would call reasonable boundaries and reasonable districts in an area. I think AI can be useful there. But I always believe that AI is not an end in itself. It's not a decisive tool. It's just another tool you can use to come up with a final document. And I never want to substitute AI for human judgment. So yes, I think AI can come up with models of what an ideal district or districts look like across the country, both congressional as well as in state legislative races, or in communities that have city councils, aldermen, wards. But at the end of the day, the final decision and the final line should be crafted and decided upon by human beings.
Interesting.
I've seen a lot of different celebrities and supporting different candidates, especially in this election. What effect do you think that has on how people decide to vote or who they decide to support?
Well, I think it has an effect. I think it'd be very persuasive in some ways. I think people who've been in government and you had to make key decisions and been in leadership roles, those kind of endorsements, I think, carry more weight than celebrities. I mean, look, I like Taylor Swift. She's clearly the most prominent entertainer in the world today. But I think her endorsement doesn't carry as much weight as, say, someone like a Dick Cheney supporting Kamala Harris. I mean, that is huge in terms of telling you what he believes about Kamala Harris's opponent and that person's ability to lead. So I think people who've been in government, who had a history of leadership, like a Dick Cheney, his endorsement would carry a lot more weight than a Kamala than a Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion on the effects that protesting has with decisions lawmakers choose?
Well, I heard your question. I don't quite understand where you're going with that question. I mean, embedded in our First Amendment is the right to the freedom to assemble. And I believe in that right to assembly. I believe in protest. Now, protests obviously should be peaceful and not violent. I'm not in favor of any kind of violent protest at all. I think that's harmful to our society. But I don't quite understand your question. So could you elaborate on what you mean by your question?
do you think that protesting and that people's right of freedom of speech impact the decisions of lawmakers?
Oh, I think they do. I think they do. I mean, lawmakers obviously care about what their constituents say. And the more they hear it from their constituents, and the more frequent that is, and the more prevalent the presence of their constituents are on an issue, that's going to have an impact on how a lawmaker votes.
Mm-hmm. I know for myself, last time I talked to you, you suggested me going to be a page. What advice do you have for other high school students through voting to get more touch the community and also to understand more about the voting system?
Well, I'm one of those legislators that believe that we should give young people more of a voice and more of a role in government. If you're familiar with my history at all, I was a big advocate of putting a student. I've been a big advocate of putting students on school boards. I remember a few years ago, I was an advocate for putting a student on the state school board. That initially got shot down by my Senate body, where I reside, the state senator. The House picked it back up, and eventually that got put into law that a student would sit on the state school board. Now that student doesn't have a vote, which is where I wanted to go at the first place. Not only put the student on the board, but give that student a vote. I brought that back every year. I'm going to bring it back again this year. The student on the state school board should have a voice. A vote and a voice, a vote and a voice. And I think that should be true for local school boards as well. That students should be put on local school boards and be given a vote. I'm a strong believer in giving young people, as early as 16, some stake in our civic government.
This is very interesting. Well, thank you so much for talking with us. It's been a
Well,
pleasure having you.
You think that's a good idea? I mean, you're young people.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Should 16-year-olds have a right to vote for a student member on the local school board?
I feel like that's fair. Yeah. Now, I don't know, like, how much I would know about somebody, especially if it was somebody who's running from another school. But I do think that would be a very good idea. Right.
And why is that?
Oh, since the school board is making decisions about how we learn and how, teachers teach us,
I think it's very insightful to have someone who's a part of that speak about it.
Yeah.
Share their voice.
And give their feedback.
It's also a voice of the students, not just the adults that are applying these, but it's also the students who is receiving it. Yeah.
Well, that's right. You guys are stakeholders in the role of education. I mean, in terms of the buildings that are built, the classrooms that are built, the teachers who are taught, what you guys eat, what textbooks you use. You guys are stakeholders in that, and you should have some input in those decisions. So I'm glad to hear that you're supportive of that, and those are the reasons why you should have a voice in that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What options? I know you were talking about before for being part of the board. Is there any other options that you think that could be implemented so kids could have more of a voice?
Well, I've got several, but I would start there. I think we should get people as young as 16 into the habit of voting and voting on meaningful legislation. At one time, you had to be 21 to be able to vote. Kentucky was one of the leading states to start that movement to now 18-year-olds can vote. I think if we get 16-year-olds the ability to drive and to handle cars, and put themselves and others at risk when they drive, give them that kind of responsibility, I don't see why we can't let 16-year-olds vote in certain government elections.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting.
Let me tell you this. There are a lot of 16-year-olds with more maturity than some 60-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think for this happening, would it be each person individually, or would it be more like school based?
No, I mean the 16-year-olds individually would vote.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just like they vote for their student council representatives, they would vote for the student member on the local school board.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you for so much for meeting with us. We had a great time.
I'm glad you do it. I'm glad you young men have interest in government. I want to support that. Obviously, you have interest in communication, and again, what you're doing is getting your voice out, mm-hmm. And sharing with people those things that are of interest to you. So I applaud what you're doing. I'm glad to be of service to you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for being part of it.
Mm.
Okay then. Good luck to you, gentlemen.
Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was a great conversation with Senator Thomas. What do you guys think?
Again, I mean, yeah, no, I think he had a lot of interesting comments on what we asked him, especially with, the voice of the people and protesting, things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed having him ask us some questions regarding people our age being able to vote and represent ourselves and the people of our state.
Yeah, that was very interesting because with a lot of the stuff where they, the state trusts us to drive, the state trusts us to do a bunch of other stuff, yet voting is not one of them, and we're able to drive and be on the road, and we could also be voting for who do we want to be representing us in our state, in our government, whatever that is. Who do we want to have, and what do we want to see in the school system in our communities? It's also really interesting to think about because for celebrities, I thought like they had a really big impact, but it's interesting to see how the other candidates that have been politically involved were some of the bigger ones affecting voting.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree on his take with that, where someone who has been in a similar position, has worked with the government for potentially many years, will have a much larger impact on people's thoughts on voting if they endorse one candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also with their work, and they understand how hard it is, they understand the difficulties and like the troubles they went through when they were in office. They would know how other people will do and are able to see, okay, this candidate is probably a better fit for an office than this other candidate. Mm-hmm. Yet also with gerrymandering, it's understandable how hard it is to get people to work together. Yet also, I didn't know the stuff about AI for what they're doing and what they're looking at with the whole group working on what AI can be used for.
Yeah, no, I had no clue that they had that task force. Mm-hmm. It's something to look into for the future, right?
Yeah. I think it'd be really interesting to look at and what effects they're seeing can be done with AI, because AI is evolving every day and we don't know what's going to do next tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a task force to manage that. What can we do with it? What should not be done with it? And what all's in between.
Yeah.
With it Like you said, with it evolving, there are constantly more and more things that it is able to do, and there will be more and more things it is able to do in the future. So, it's just a big thing that is becoming a large part of society.
Yeah, and especially looking into what it could do, not just on a national level, but also on a a state and local level. That I think is going to be key, moving forward into this century, right?
Mm-hmm. And for high school students as well, for the committees, I mean, we were talking about before how we can really affect where we see stuff and what we see in our schools every day.
We are in the schools. We're the ones being taught the information, what we think about how that process should be done. Maybe be able to change some policies for the better that really help people our age.
I also feel like we're the main people who are seeing this stuff happen. We're seeing it every day. We're seeing when we come to class. We're seeing it in our classes that we attend for every day. And a lot of these things, the adults don't see it as much, but we're seeing it daily and knowing like what we want to see changed. But it's also times where there'll be times that it won't be fully understood by students where it's just not understanding about what do things exactly mean if you don't do enough research on it. Yeah, I think it's been a great time talking with Senator Thomas, and thank you all for listening. And do you have any guys' final thoughts?
I think I'm excited to see what comes of these, possible representatives of high school students. I'm excited to see what comes of AI in gerrymandering in the rest of the government. And
you? Well, I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on Govcast. And this has been Isaac,
Felix,
and Isaac.
And thank you all for listening.